Hello everybody, it's Miss Jessica again from EVPL McCullough, but today I'm coming to you from inside my house for our chapter book story time. Again, we are going to be reading Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library, and the last time that we were together, we were able to read chapters 1 and 2. Today, we're going to be reading chapters 3 and 4. Now, before we get started, a couple of things. The first one, obviously, I have some kitties and they like to come and visit while we're doing story time because they think that I'm reading the story to them and they really want to participate with us. So right now we have Harper and she's trying to be really snuggly right now and she really wants to get to this story. If any of the others stop by, I'll introduce them as well, but hi Harper, we're doing good today. Hopefully you guys are doing good and having some really good fun at home. And I know for certain that this story is one of those really fun things. Now, before we get started, I have my snuggly blanket because I like to be comfortable when I read. We always want reading to be a really good experience. And then I also have some water nearby just in case I do need to take a drink. But we're going to go ahead and get started with chapters 3 and 4 today. So before, when we were reading in chapter 1, Kyle and his brothers like to play a board game and they have to go around and find all kinds of clues and different things on a scavenger hunt. Well, Kyle accidentally broke the window and got grounded, so that's not good. And then we also were introduced to the new library that's being built in Ohio and how it is going to be an amazing library that has lots of things in it that I wish we could have at our library, like animatronic animals and holographic authors and even a big, huge LED screen in the ceiling that'll do all kinds of fun things. So all of those things sounded really neat and I can't wait to see how they're going to come into play into our story. All right, so today, chapter 3. Of course, even though he was grounded, Kyle Keeley still had to go to school. Mike, Curtis, Kyle, time to wake up, his mother called from down in the kitchen. Kyle plopped his feet on the floor, rubbed his eyes, and sleepily looked around his room. The computer handed down from his brother Curtis was sitting on the desk that used to belong to his other brother Mike. The rug on the floor with its Cincinnati Reds logo had also been Mike's when he was 12 years old. The books lined up in his bookcase had been lined up on Mike's and Curtis's shelves. Except for the ones Kyle got each year for Christmas from his grandmother, he still hadn't read last year's edition. He wasn't big on books, unless they were instruction manual or hint guide to a video game. He had a Sony PlayStation set up in the family room. It wasn't the high-def Blu-ray PS3. It was the one Santa had brought Mike, maybe 4 years earlier. Mike kept the brand new Blu-ray model locked up in his bedroom. But still, clunker that it was, the 4-year-old gaming console in the family room worked. Except this week. Well, it worked, but Kyle's dad had taken away his TV and computer privileges, so unless he just wanted to hear the hard drive hum, there was really no point in firing up the PlayStation until the next Sunday when his sentence ended. When you're grounded in this house, his father had said, you're grounded. If Kyle needed a computer for homework during the last week of school, he could use his mom's, the one in the kitchen. His mom had no games on her computer. Okay, she had Diner Dash, but that didn't really count. Being grounded in the Keeley household meant you couldn't do anything except, as Dad put it, think about what you did that caused you to be grounded. Kyle knew what he had done. He had broken a window. But hey, I also beat my big brothers. Good morning, Kyle, his mother said when he hit the kitchen. She was sitting at her computer desk, sipping coffee and tapping the keys. Grab a toaster tart for breakfast. Curtis and Mike were already in the kitchen, chowing down on the last of the good toaster tarts, the frosted cupcake swirls. They'd left Kyle the unfrosted brown sugar cinnamon, the ones that tasted like the box they came in. New library opens Friday just in time for summer vacation, Kyle's mom mumbled, reading her computer screen. Been 12 years since they tore down the old one. Listen to this, boys. Dr. Yanina Zinchenko, the new public library's head librarian, promises that patrons will be surprised by what they find inside. Really? Said Kyle, who has always liked a good surprise. I wonder what they'll have in there. Books maybe, said Kyle. It's a library. Still, said Curtis, I can't wait to get my new library card. Because you're a nerd, said Mike. I prefer the term geek, said Curtis. Well, I gotta go, said Kyle, grabbing his backpack. Don't want to miss the bus. He hurried out the door. What Kyle really didn't want to miss were his friends. A lot of them had Sony PSPs and Nintendo 3DSs, loaded with lots and lots of games. Kyle fist bumped and knuckle knocked his way up to the bus aisle to his usual seat. Almost everybody wanted to say hey to him, except, of course, Sierra Russell. He always liked Sierra, who was also a 7th grader, was sitting in the back of the bus, her nose buried in a book. Probably one of those about girls who lived in tiny homes on the prairie or something. Ever since her parents divorced and her dad moved out of town, Sierra Russell had been incredibly quiet and spent all her free time reading. Nice shirt, said Akemi Hughes as Kyle slid into the seat beside her. Thanks. It used to be Mike's. Doesn't matter. It's still cool. Akemi's mother was Asian, her dad Irish. She had very long jet black hair, extremely blue eyes, and a ton of freckles. What are you playing? Kyle asked, because Akemi was frantically working the controls on her PSP 3000. Squirrel Squad, said Akemi. One of Mr. Lemoncello's best, said Kyle, who had the same game on his PlayStation. The one he couldn't play with for a week. You need a hand? Nah. Watch out for the beehive. I know about the beehives, Kyle. I'm just saying, yes. What? I cleared level 6 finally. Awesome. Kyle did not mention that he was up to level 27. Akemi was his best friend. Friends don't gloat to friends. When I shot the squirrels at the falcon, said Akemi, the pilots parachuted. If a squirrel bit the pilot in the butt, I got a 50-point bonus. Yes, in Mr. Lemoncello's Catapulting Critters game, there were all sorts of wacky jokes. The falcons weren't birds. They were F-16 Falcon fighter jets. And the squirrels? They were nuts. Totally bonkers. With swirly whirlpool eyes, they flew through the air, jabbering gibberish. They bit butts. This was one of the main reasons why Kyle thought everything that came out of Mr. Lemoncello's Imagination Factory, board games, puzzles, video games, was amazingly awesome. For Mr. Lemoncello, a game just wasn't a game. It wasn't a little goofy around the edges. So, did you pick up the bonus code? Asked Kyle. Huh? In the freeze frame, there! Akemi studied the screen. Turn it over. Akemi did. See that number tucked into the corner? Type that in the next time the home screen asks for your password. Why? What happens? You'll see. Akemi slugged him in the arm. What? Well, don't be surprised if you start flinging flaming squirrels on level 7. Get out! Try it. You'll see. I will this afternoon. So, did you write your extra credit essay? Huh? What essay? The one that's due today about the new public library. Refresh my memory? Akemi sighed. Because the old library was torn down 12 years ago, the 12-year-olds who write the best essay on why I'm excited about the new public library will get to go to the library lock-in this Friday night. Huh? The winners will spend the night in the new library before anybody else even gets to see the place. Is this like that movie, Night in the Museum? Will the books come alive and chase people around and junk? No, but there will probably be free movies and food and prizes and games. All of a sudden, Kyle was interested. All right, chapter 4. So, exactly what kind of games are we talking about? I don't know, said Akemi. Fun book stuff, I guess? And do you think this new library will have equally new computers? Definitely. Wi-Fi? Probably. Kyle nodded slowly. And this all takes place Friday night? Yep. Akemi, I think you just discovered a way for me to shorten my most recent groundation. Your what? My game-deprived parental punishment. Kyle figured being locked in a library with computers on Friday night would be better than being stuck at home without any gaming gear at all. Can I borrow a pen and a sheet of paper? What? You're gonna write your essay now on the bus? Better late than never. They're due in homeroom, Kyle, first thing. Fine, I'll keep it brief. Akimi shook her head and handed Kyle a notebook and a pen. The bus bounced over a speed bump into the school driveway. He would need to make this essay really, really short. He was hoping the 12 winners would be randomly pulled out of a hat or something, like the lottery people always said in their TV commercials. You just had to be in it to win it. Meanwhile, in another part of town, Charles Chillington was sitting in his father's library working with a college student who'd been hired to help him polish up his extra credit essay. He was dressed in his typical school uniform, khaki slacks, blue blazer, button-down shirt, and tastefully striped tie. He was the only student at Alexandriaville Middle School who dressed that way. What's a big word for library? Charles asked his tutor. Teachers love big words. Book repository. Bigger, please. Anthonyum? Perfect! It's such a weird word. They'll have to look it up. Charles made the change, saved the file, and sent the document off to the printer. Your dad sure reads a lot, said his ELA tutor, admiring the leather-bound books lining the walls of Mr. Chillington's home library. Knowledge is power, said Charles. It's one of our fundamental family philosophies. Another, we eat losers for breakfast. Kyle and Akimi climbed off the bus and headed into school. You know, said Akimi, my dad told me the library people had like a bazillion different architects doing drawings and blueprints that they couldn't share with each other. How come? To keep everything super secret. My dad said his firm did the front door and that was it. To keep everything super secret? The second they stepped into Mrs. Cameron's classroom for homeroom period, Miguel Fernandez shouted, Hey, Kyle, check it out, bro. He held up a clear plastic binder, maybe 2 inches thick. I totally aced my essay, man. The 9 library dealio? Yeah, I put in pictures and charts, plus a whole section about the ancient library of Alexandria, Egypt, since it's Alexandriaville, Ohio? Cool, said Kyle. Miguel Fernandez was super enthusiastic about everything. He was also president of the school's Library Aid Society. Hey, Kyle, you know what they say about libraries? Not really. They have something for every chapter of your life. While Kyle groaned, the second bell rang. All right, everybody, said Mrs. Dana Cameron, Kyle's homeroom teacher. Time to turn in your extra credit essays. She started walking up and down the rows of desks. The judges will be meeting in the faculty lounge this morning to make the preliminary cut. Crap, thought Kyle. There were judges? This was not going to be a bingo ball drawing like the lottery. Mr. Keeley, the teacher hovered over his desk. Did you write an essay? Yeah, sort of. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Either you wrote an essay or you didn't. Kyle half-heartedly handed his hastily scribbled sheet of paper. And unfortunately, Mrs. Cameron read it out loud. Balloons. There might be balloons. The classroom erupted in laughter. Until Mrs. Cameron did that, tilt down her glasses and glare over them things she did to terrify everybody into total silence. This is your essay, Kyle? Yes, ma'am. We were supposed to write about why we're excited about the grand opening. Well, balloons are always my favorite part. I see, said Mrs. Cameron. You know, Kyle, your brother Curtis wrote excellent essays when he was in my class. Yes, Mrs. Cameron, mumbled Kyle. Mrs. Cameron sighed contentedly. Please give him my regards. Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Cameron moved over to the next desk. Miguel eagerly handed her his thick booklet. Very well done, Miguel. Thank you, Mrs. Cameron. Kyle heard an odd noise out of the parking lot, a puttering, clunking, clinking sound. Oh my, said Mrs. Cameron. I wonder if that's him. She hurried over to the window and pulled up the blinds. All the kids in the classroom followed her, and then they saw it. Out in the visitor parking lot, a car that looked like a giant red boot on wheels. It had a strip of notched black boot sole for its bumper, thick shoelaces, crisscrossed their way up from the windshield to the top of a 10-foot tall boot collar. "It looks just like a red boot from that game," said Miguel. "Family Frenzy." Kyle nodded. Family Frenzy was Mr. Lemoncello's first and probably most famous game. The red boot was one of the 10 tokens you could pick to move around the board. A tall, gangly man stepped out of the boot car. "It's Mr. Lemoncello!" gasped Kyle, his heart racing. "What's he doing here?" "It was just announced," said Mrs. Cameron. "This evening, Mr. Luigi Lemoncello himself will be the final judge." "Of what?" "Your library essays." That's the end of chapter 4. Well, a couple of things before we go. Don't forget, you can always visit our resources. We do have 2 apps so that you can get ebooks while you're at home and staying safe. The first one is Libby by Overdrive, and that has ebooks and e-audiobooks, and that's actually where I was able to get my ebook. And then we also have our Hoopla app, and that one you can do all kinds of fun things, not just books and audiobooks, but you can also do TV shows and music and movies. So there's so many fun things to do to keep you busy while you're at home. And hopefully we'll see you again soon. And don't forget, you can always visit our website, evpl.org, and get all kinds of fun resources there, because we'll definitely be adding some fun things in the next coming weeks. So goodbye for now, and we'll see you again soon. And Harper, who's still right here, she says goodbye also, and hope to see you soon.